Violence, murder. These are just a few of the things a really good thriller book needs, but who amongst us in this dark and twisted city is the best at writing them? Well, that's what me and my guest are going to decide this week as we take two heavyweight contenders of the genre and see which one of them is going to make it out alive in Beyond the Manuscript's continuing series, Author Fight. But before we get to all of that good stuff here, I need to introduce my guest for the week. Joining me this week is an Ayrshire-born Scot living in Glasgow with his family and his Australian Labradoodle. With over 30 years of experience as a cop, he had turned to writing as an escape and to entertain old friends. After retiring from the force in 2017, he earned his master's degree in creative writing from the University of Glasgow. Here today to talk about his debut novel, The Corsairs, please help me in welcoming my guest today, Mr. Brian Cook. How are we doing today, Brian? How are things?
Doing great, Cooper. Lovely to be here. Thanks very much for inviting me on.
No problem. Well, this is exciting because I think you're one of the first persons from our graduating class from the University of Glasgow to actually come on the show, but also you have a debuting novel that I was really interested to just pick your brain over, and I thought of no better excuse than to bring you on the show and talk about it. So to kind of get things started here, can you please tell us all about The Corsairs and any kind of, how did the book get made, all that good stuff?
Well, The Corsairs, it's a coming-of-age story of a young chap from a mining community in Ayrshire during the late 80s, a time of great economic catharsis in the UK, who leaves his mining community to join the police and encounters a whole range of challenges to be accepted within this new world of policing in an area of multiple deprivation. It's violent, has drug problems, and of course a thing that's blighted the west of Scotland for a long time, especially Glasgow, sectarianism. So it's a story of a person who thinks he's left one problem behind only to encounter a whole set of other problems that he has to then navigate his way through and finally be forced to make a decision on where he stands in life. You know, what kind of person, what kind of man is he going to be to stand up for right or wrong. So it's a good old-fashioned tale of right and wrong, but it's a real good story, I feel, about the challenges of being a young person navigating a very complex world.
And like I said, kind of at the top of the show here, you obviously have over 30 years of experience being a police officer in a city like Glasgow. In your opinion, how much of that kind of experience seeped in to the pages of this book?
Yeah, it's an obvious great question. I do get asked this quite a lot, and it's fair enough. Yes, there is an element of the sort of culture, the type of incidents that I attended as a young cop in Glasgow when I joined, do find their way into the story. Alec Mackay, the protagonist, is not me. I didn't come from a mining town. The relationship he has with his father and his community are not the problems that I had. But yeah, the culture, very strict culture, hierarchical culture that was present at that time is something I encountered. I did encounter an element of prejudice because I was a Roman Catholic from certain people. Thankfully, that's all gone now. But in the 80s, it was still quite strong. It was still very much present in a lot of working life. So I did encounter some of these things. Some of the very gruesome scenes within the book, and there are several very gruesome scenes, as a warning to your viewers, is, I encountered scenes similar to them. And I did draw upon apocryphal tales I heard amongst colleagues way back then as well. But it's not semi-autobiographical. I've stressed that it is a work of fiction, but I think your readers will find it's a very authentic work of fiction, and it's very realistic. And if they want to look up Amazon, they'll see from the reviews some feedback from old cops who retired many years ago who comment very much on that. So if they're looking for something real, gritty, and a tale of real human warmth as well, amongst all that, they won't be disappointed.
So I'm very curious because it's not a very typical kind of career change to for someone to spend such a long time on the police force and then to transition into writing. Was there any kind of like genesis moment of you were like, oh, this is what I want to do, or was it kind of just like, you know what, I finally have the time to do this. Let me give it a go.
Yeah, yes, I've been asking myself that. I don't have a 100% satisfactory answer to it because I haven't quite worked it out, processed it myself. What I think now, as time goes by, is actually I parked my desire for writing for 30 years, basically, because I came out a police officer. Before I joined the police, my favourite subject was English. I excelled at it at school. When I was doing HND Applied Physics, I spent lots of the classes where I was bored writing short stories for fun for my pals in the class. So looking back on all that, I was always creative that way. Some of the jobs I did in the police, in terms of project stuff, was required a bit of creativity as well. And so I realised there was something in there that had lain dormant for a long time. I found that also writing sort of police-type stories, short stories, which is where I started off, just as I was approaching retirement, was a form of release. It was quite nice to get some of that stuff down, and you could say there was a wee bit of therapy in there, and so that's where it began. And by putting little short stories up on Facebook, got a huge response from all friends and Facebook chums, and that really gave me a bit of a lift. And that is why I thought I'll take this further. Did some online courses, one thing led to another, and then ended up on the Lit course where I met yourself and all those great people on the Lit course.
So just because we were going to be talking about thrillers and mystery books later on in the show, in your opinion, what elements of that kind of story do you think is not only just needed, but needs to like accelerate at for it to be considered a really quite good mystery, a really good thriller?
Well, I think it's all for me. I think it's character. How you the character's got to be authentic, and there's got to be some sort of truth in the character. That when a reader reads a book and the protagonist is introduced to them, and their reactions to events that are thrown at them, they have to have an authenticity to them. So, for instance, a colleague and I were talking about this recently, how they were fed up in the crime genre with the ever more outlandish sort of characters that have now been dragged into that genre. He laughed at the idea of, we're getting to the stage where the janitor's foiling an international drug smuggling cartel because it was constantly reaching out to the peripheral characters. Excuse me. So yes, to me, the first step has got to be an authentic character, someone we can all believe in and root for. And then, as you know, the idea should be that we should be put through all these hoops and torturous things and come through at the end of the day triumphant, and we're rooting for them. But we can't root for them unless we believe in them. And so that's where the magic is, I think.
Sure. I was like, speaking of characters, like I think you're right, and character does need to be kind of first. And I think there is such a thing as having too flawed of a character. Like, having like a gumshoe detective being your main character is great. Having that person being just like the most barely high functioning alcoholic, and then having to like run through an entire city, and I'm like, nah, I don't believe that at all.
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. So you're right. So there does need to be quite a good balance, I think.
Yes, 100%. And still, I love the fact that in some respects the magic thing is we all want someone to experience all this pain but still come out okay, because we see a bit of ourselves in there in our everyday lives. And although our trials and tribulations may be minor in comparison, we still want to feel that we'll win through in the end as well. There's always a sort of reflection back, I feel, in some respects, by placing people in these situations along with the character. And that's where all the magic happens.
All right. Well, I think that is an absolutely wonderful introduction. You are clearly qualified to be here in this author fight today. Before we actually get into debating who should be the top of these thriller mystery novelists here, where can people find your stuff?
Oh, thanks for asking. Yes. So The Corsairs is on Amazon at the moment, purely on Amazon. And if you just look up The Corsairs by Brian Cook, you'll find it there straight away. The cover, I must add in, is a cover that was designed by a lady called Cherry Chapman of Chapman and Wilders. I worked and collaborated with for the cover. It was a really, really lovely creative process to work between us to the final design, and I think she did a really good job. So the cover itself is very much bespoke, professional done cover, and I'm really pleased with it. But so anyway, that's what it is. It's Amazon. You can get it on Kindle, Kindle Unlimited, and on paperback.
Very cool. And of course, as always, the links to all of these books are going to be in the description down below. Awesome. All right. Well, that takes care of our introductions here. Now, let's move on to the fun stuff. We are going to jump right into this author fight here. So let me break down the rules real quick. Like always, author fight will be broken down into 3 rounds. Round number 1 will just be the introduction of who the author is and their works. You know, why do we know their name? Why do we like them in the first place? That kind of thing. Round 2 is going to be any and all adaptations that this author has of their work that's out in the world for us to enjoy. And then round 3 is just going to be overall cultural impact. You know, how does this thing shape our culture, history, and society? That's what's going to determine the winner for round 3. So, Brian, introducing the blue corner over on your side here for today. Who is your champion? Who is going to be the person that you want to reign supreme in the genre of thrillers/mysteries?
Well, I'm championing or putting forward the author Mick Herron, who is a spy thriller par excellence in the modern take of the spy thriller, who's currently done the Slough House novels. It's a series, there's about 5 or 6 novels in that series of a spy who takes under his wing a number of misfits who are kicked out of MI5, and it's all about their trials and tribulations in the murky world of internal spying in the UK. And what he's brought to the table is a brand new twist on the spy thriller, one that has some dark humour, one that brings it right up to date, and is thoroughly entertaining.
So that's introducing the blue corner there. Over here at the red corner, I chose a very kind of seasoned heavyweight here. So I was thinking, who did I really enjoy the most when it comes to thrillers? Who do I always want to root for? Who do I always think can possibly win every single fight that they're in? I, of course, am choosing my champion, who is the Goliath versus the Goliath stories with over 25 novels, 2 Tom Cruise movies, and a hit Amazon Prime series. I, of course, am talking about Lee Child's international success, the Jack Reacher series, right? And so, the Jack Reacher series, I remember reading when I was in my 20s, and it was one of those things that really kind of got me into reading a lot more mysteries, where it's one of those, you're never really questioning if Jack Reacher can win, but you want to see him do it. Or if Lee Child wasn't careful with the character, it could have very much just been like, a muscled out former American Army major, and then he just kind of muscled his way through, but instead he actually made him quite smart, and he's actually able to solve mysteries a bunch. Plus, he also made his former job being a military police officer. So today's fight is going to be in a young upstart starting his new career versus the old guard who probably has a little more flaws than we'd probably like to admit. But now we're going to see who is going to be fighting who. So that takes care of round 1. Like, we have the introductions out of the way. Now let's talk round 2 of adaptations. And so, Brian, take it away.
Well, Mick Herron has now been adapted for television. The Slough House is now called Slow Horses, and it's on Apple TV. So you can see 3 series now and a 4th on the way. And they are very faithful to the books. And they take forward the character of Jackson Lamb, who's the main protagonist in Slough House novels. Jackson Lamb being almost like a down-and-out spy master, a relic from the sort of Cold War days, who's been sidelined into a little crummy office in the heart of London, up above a little Chinese restaurant out of the way. And so transferring that to the television screen, a character that's so richly painted by Mick Herron in the books, was always going to be a challenge. But Gary Oldman is the lead character in this series, and he has done an absolutely terrific job. To the extent now you wouldn't be able to picture Jackson Lamb other than the face of Gary Oldman. It's a terrific hit. It's got huge positive reviews, and it's reinvigorated completely the whole idea of the spy series, and it takes on the mantle, even I would say, of John le Carré, and takes it forward. The same subterfuge, the same intricate plot lines, the same nuances in some respects, but basically put in the 21st century and given a big, huge boost with a lot of sardonic wit and really dark humour that Smiley didn't bring to his books. So I would say you've basically got a series now from book to television that has got everything that you would want from a spy series, but with some icing on top and a cherry as well. It's terrific. It's a whole package.
What do you think it is about Gary Oldman's interpretation of the character that really sells it for you? Are there any kind of like small moments? Does he is it because I'm not too familiar with the series? Is it like is he a larger than life character? Is it just very small, serious moments? What does it for you?
So the character verges on the unlikable. He's basically tons of flatulence. He drinks whiskey all the time. He appears slovenly, almost like Columbo, but even more down and out looking. He appears to be indifferent. He appears to be quite callous towards these misfits that are dumped in his office because they have made some mistake somewhere in their career, and they're just dumped in a sort of purgatory at Slough House where he's based. But underneath it all, what you see is a vulnerability that he actually does care. His demeanour that is so caustic and uncaring is actually just to provoke and prod these misfits to raise their game. And so what Gary Oldman brings to that is that multi-layered performance where after a while you really, really root for Gary Oldman, and you really root for Jackson Lamb, his character, because he is still very capable. The whole front that's put on of this kind of alcoholic, slovenly person is just simply that. And what you learn after a while is that the whole thing is there to deceive. To people become complacent about him and they read him wrong, and he turns out to be actually just still a consummate killer, a consummate spy, a very intelligent and very intuitive character. So yes, so you end up being sort of against your better judgment, wanting to be a friend of Jackson Lamb. Although, in real life, if you were to sit down with him, he'd just be abusive towards you,
Yeah. Awesome. Very good. Gary Oldman, honestly, he's such a chameleon when he does any kind of role. He is able to kind of really transform into any kind of role. He's in a Harry Potter film one day, and then he's shouting in Leon the Professional, right?
Yes.
Like that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, he's great.
Yeah, and he's Churchill.
He is Churchill. He totally is. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think you've just hit the nail on the head about Gary Oldman himself and what he brings to that. Is that chameleon character? Yes, 100%. You wouldn't believe it was Gary Oldman. He's so horrible looking, but yes, terrific actor.
Very cool. Awesome. All right, well, that takes care of round number 2 for your JB. Now we're going to move over to Lee Child and all of his adaptations. And the first one, honestly, kind of flawed. Like, the first 2 adaptations of the Jack Reacher series are, of course, the Tom Cruise movies. And it's one of those where I am one of those people who genuinely hated on that film. Yeah. Not because Tom Cruise is not a bad actor. He's not a bad actor. He actually plays the role fairly well and fairly precise. He does not fit this larger than life. Like the character of Jack Reacher is like 6'4", 250. Like he's jacked. He's a jacked person. Yeah. And he's also really, really smart. And he's also incredibly stoic. And Tom Cruise, like I said, is a very smiley, kind of happy kind of actor. A little too much for my taste in those movies. And so, yeah, it kind of... I can definitely see where those movies kind of put a bad taste in people's mouths. And also I think beyond the Tom Cruise thing, the first movie tells you who the killer is in the first 30 seconds. And it's very much, and in the movie they're trying to adapt, you don't find that out until in the 70% mark, where you should learn that information, and I think in a story. So obviously, first movie, not great. Second movie, I didn't even watch, unfortunately. However, this, a few years go by, and now we've got the Amazon Prime series Reacher with Alan Richardson, who plays the character exactly how he's written in the first book of The Killing Floor. Right? He is silent. He knows when not to talk. And he's also showing off how intelligent he is. And he knows how to get violent when he needs to, especially when he stumbles into a giant crime ring. Which the only flaw I think in that story, more than anything, is that I think it's very, very convenient. This doesn't spoil anything. This is all in the first episode, right?
Yeah.
That he walks into this town. There's clearly some kind of crime ring going on, and Jack Reacher walks in very randomly, and he discovers that his brother, who he hasn't seen in years, is murdered in this small Georgian town.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those. Once you get past that, though, the story gets great. I think he's such a good character where. If you're a person who's ever felt vulnerable, if you've ever wished that you could talk back to authority the way that he does, or if you've ever, wanted to pack it up and just start roaming the countryside with nothing but a bus pass and a little bit of, cash in your pocket, he does that. And I think that's a really fun character to kind of live vicariously through.
I would throw in, if I may, just a little bit.
Go for it.
A comment on the TV adaptations for Reacher. Is the first series I thought was fantastic. I really, really enjoyed it. And I recognise the trope, which is the lone gunman almost in the westerns coming in, you saw it with Clint Eastwood with Fistful of Dollars and all that kind of stuff. I love all that, the lone guy against all that stuff. But I felt the second series hit a brick wall, not because of Reacher's character himself, but the attempt to have an ensemble cast, each having their own speaking parts, almost on an equal basis, meant that you had four characters talking in the round all the time, and it meant that dialogue was very stilted, and actually it was really painful.
So that takes care of round number 2. Let's move on. Final round number 3, overall cultural impact. Go for it, Brian.
Well, it's hard to measure at this point in time with Mick Herron because now that the novels have hit the TV screens, I would say that it's still got a way to go before we can actually see how many copycat books come out in that style, which I'm sure there will be because it's clearly a tremendous formula. But given, it's very rare for an author to make that leap from book to TV screen, then I would say that he is obviously making a massive impact because the biggest culture we've got is TV, by far, TV and film. So to make that into the visual realm from reading is a fantastic achievement, and to do it successfully, because you and I know, and all your viewers will know, that to transit from book to TV or movie is a world littered with failures. You obviously mentioned Tom Cruise there with Reacher. There are tons of attempts to do things that don't work out, and we never see them. They just end up on the cutting room floor. So it's 3 successful series now, receiving tremendous praise, especially Gary Oldman and Kirsten Scott Thomas, who plays a kind of foil to him. So yes, I think he's made a huge impact. I think it's maybe just too early to say. How he follows this up is maybe the bigger question, compared to Lee Child's massive back history of Reacher. I think Mick Herron has got himself a niche. I think he's got a right defined niche that's all his own. Whether it'll end up as big as the Reacher's books and all the rest of it, I think maybe just too early to say. But I do feel that what he gives in his books is got bells and whistles and nuances and all sorts of things to it that aren't in the Lee Child books.
Mm-hmm. You're right. So I know you're talking about how it's not as big of an impact as Jack Reacher. However, I do want to go back to your point, though, of just how unlikely, or more really to give credit where credit is due, how good these books that Mick Herron wrote has to be in order for, not just, not just a TV production studio like Apple to take a chance on, but for a director, for actors, for the crew who has to produce the editors. All of that stuff has to come together and has to believe that this story is so good that it's going to translate from words on a page to not just a product of TV, but into dollar bills. Like, this is going to make us money because that's how good it is. I wouldn't discount that just because, one, creating a book in the first place, super hard. Getting that book published, even harder. Getting it to the level of fame for someone in Apple to pick it up, read it, and enjoy it. That's really hard. So, so like you said, yes, it's not as big as Lee Child, but Lee Child's got, the Jack Reacher series has a lot of flaws in it. But this one's still kind of, it's just getting started, and it's going to be really cool to see where it goes further on. Yeah,
I would follow on. I would say what's amazing now, and we're actually, I think, probably getting so used to it, we're becoming quite complacent, is the production values for these things now. We've got Netflix and Amazon and Apple TV. Is their movie-level production values. And it's terrific cinematography. It's such an amount of investment in these programs. So you're getting an absolute platinum quality product on your TV screen. For just adding to what you said there, 100% agree with you, Cooper. Such a terrific effort to get these things together. Such a mosaic of various talents has to work together to produce that.
Yeah, absolutely. And so now going over to round 3 for me for cultural impact of Lee Child. I think I've read on the back of like a jacket of one of like every 9 seconds someone buys a Lee Child book somewhere like in it. And granted, these are all happening in airports around the world, right? These are all little airport books, little paperbacks that people can read on the beach. But I will say though, as much as I enjoy watching Jack Reacher do stuff, it's not breaking the mold. It's not rewriting any kind of formula for book writing or for mystery writing. It's just doing one or two things really, really well.
Yeah. I agree with you there. And and what I do enjoy from the series, I've only read one book, but it was a while ago, is there is a little bit of humour in there. And for me, that's specific to my tastes. It's a very subjective arena, obviously. But I do like characters or books that give you a gripping story, the good against evil, the lone guy, the underdog, except obviously he's a very unusual underdog given his size and skills. But I do enjoy that kind of thing. But it always helps if you're able to, as an author, put just a little bit of humour in there, because it's a safety valve. You're always piling on dramatic action without any sort of release. There needs to be some sort of dark humour in there, which is why I'm a great fan of Mick Herron, because the character Jackson Lamb brings that beautifully into play, and he's got a real deft touch with that. So, yeah.
All right. Well, that is our final round here for Author Fight. Brian, obviously, you are going to be declared the winner for this episode here.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And that's going to do it for this episode of Beyond the Manuscript's continuing series, Author Fight. Let us know down in the comments down below if you think Brian's pick of Mick Herron should be the winner, or if you have another favorite for the thriller mystery genre who should reign supreme instead. Don't forget to hit that like, subscribe, all of the buttons that helps me do what I love, which is talk to you lovely folks about books. And also, if you want to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, that'd be great. It'd be really helpful. And of course, this episode of Beyond the Manuscript is brought to you by Manuscripts, where you never write alone. I want to thank my guest one more time, Brian Cook, for joining me today. Please go pick up a copy of his book, The Corsairs, link in the description down below. Brian, thank you again for coming on the show, and I hope you have a great rest of your week.
Thanks very much, Cooper. It was an absolute pleasure to be here. I thoroughly enjoyed that. Thank you.